The day her husband John walked out, the world seemed to tilt on its axis for Mary. At 64, she'd imagined her golden years filled with quiet companionship, shared cups of tea, and perhaps a bit of gardening together. Instead, she was met with a harsh, unexpected silence. John's words, cold and sharp, echoed in the empty space he left behind. "I need something more, Mary." More. What could be more than 64 years of shared life, of raising children, of building a home brick by brick? Mary sat on the worn floral sofa, the one they'd picked out together decades ago, and felt a profound ache settle deep in her chest. It wasn't just sadness, it was a physical pain, as if her heart had been squeezed dry. The house, once a bustling hub of family life, now felt vast and hollow, each room a monument to what was no longer there. The scent of his aftershave still lingered faintly in the bathroom, a cruel ghost. Tears, hot and unstoppable, streamed down her wrinkled cheeks. She wasn't just losing a husband. She was losing her identity, her future, everything she'd believed to be true. Who was Mary without John? The thought was terrifying, a gaping chasm opening before her. She'd always been John's wife, mom, grandma. Now she was just Mary. And Mary, at 64, felt utterly, hopelessly alone. The dreams she'd held for her twilight years crumbled into dust, leaving behind only the bitter taste of betrayal and the daunting question, what now? The weight of starting over, of facing a solitary existence, felt like an impossible burden. The tears eventually dried, leaving Mary's eyes puffy and her heart raw. But the emptiness in the house and in her life remained. Each morning, she woke to the same cold knot of fear in her stomach. How could she, a woman who had built her entire existence around another person, suddenly pivot and create a whole new life? The idea of starting fresh felt like a cruel joke. Fresh for whom? A young person, perhaps full of energy, and decades stretching ahead. But for her, at 64, it felt like asking a withered tree to suddenly sprout spring blossoms. Hopelessness clung to her like a damp, heavy blanket. She'd look around at the familiar furniture, the photos on the mantelpiece, each one a tiny stab of memory, and feel trapped. What would she do for money? John had always handled the finances. What would she do for company? Most of her friends were couples, and the thought of being the lone extra at gatherings filled her with dread. The world outside her front door, once a friendly, welcoming place, now seemed vast and intimidating. Even simple tasks felt overwhelming. Choosing what to make for dinner for just one person, or deciding which bills needed paying first, became monumental struggles. She often found herself just staring out the window, watching the leaves fall, feeling as if her own life was simply drifting away, unnoticed and uncared for. How could she possibly build anything new when the foundations of her old life had been so violently shaken? The path ahead wasn't just unclear, it was invisible, swallowed by a thick fog of uncertainty and despair. She longed for a sign, a whisper of what to do, but only silence answered. One particularly gloomy afternoon, as Mary sat staring blankly at the rain-streaked window, a small, quiet whisper stirred in the back of her mind. It wasn't a loud voice, or even a clear thought, but a gentle nudge, like a forgotten melody trying to surface. She remembered a dream she'd had as a young girl, long before John, long before children, long before the responsibilities of adult life had piled up. She had always wanted to live by the ocean. It was a silly, impractical dream she'd told herself for decades. The ocean was for vacations, for fleeting moments of joy, not for permanent residence. But now, in the midst of her despair, the idea shimmered with a faint, hopeful light. She pictured crashing waves, the salty air, the endless horizon, a life where the sound of gulls replaced the oppressive silence of her empty house. The thought was so fragile, so delicate, she almost dismissed it. How could she even think of such a thing when she couldn't even manage to cook a decent meal for herself? Yet, the image of the vast, open sea, untamed and free, refused to completely fade. It was a tiny spark in the deep, dark well of her hopelessness. A flicker that suggested there might, just might, be something beyond the walls of her present misery. It wasn't a plan, not yet. It was simply a feeling, a vague yearning for a different kind of quiet, a different kind of peace, one that the endless, rhythmic breath of the sea promised. It was the first time in weeks that her thoughts drifted away from her pain, towards a possibility, however faint. The faint spark of her ocean dream, though still tiny, had ignited a surprising resolve within Mary. If she was truly going to live by the sea, she couldn't stay in this big, empty house that echoed with old memories and growing loneliness. The house itself was a heavy anchor, holding her in place. Selling it felt like cutting a lifeline, yet also like setting herself free. The thought was terrifying, a leap into the unknown, but the alternative, staying put in her sorrow, was even more frightening. One Tuesday morning, after a restless night, Mary picked up the phone. Her hand trembled as she dialed the number of a local real estate agent. "I want to sell my house," she said, her voice sounding surprisingly steady, though her heart hammered against her ribs. The agent, a cheerful woman named Brenda, arrived a few days later, full of suggestions about staging and open houses. Mary walked Brenda through each room, pointing out features, but inside, she felt a profound disconnect. This wasn't just a house. It was the backdrop of her entire adult life. Putting the for sale sign in the front yard felt like a public declaration, a tearing away of her past. Neighbors looked, some with sympathy, some with curiosity. Each showing was an invasion, strangers peering into her most private spaces, evaluating her life. It was exhausting, emotionally draining, and every no from a potential buyer felt like a personal rejection. Yet, with each step, no matter how scary, Mary felt a tiny bit stronger. The idea of the ocean, of a new horizon, pulled her forward, even when fear threatened to drag her back into the familiar comfort of her grief. This house, for all its memories, had become a cage, and she was determined to unlock the door. After what felt like an eternity of house showings and paperwork, Mary's big house finally sold. With the money from the sale and a newfound sense of purpose, she began her search for a new home by the sea. She scoured listings, drove for hours, and walked through dozens of houses, none of which felt quite right. Some were too grand, some too far from the water, others simply lacked that elusive spark. Just as discouragement started to creep back in, she saw an ad for a small cottage nestled on a quiet street, just a stone's throw from the beach. When Mary first saw the cottage, a strange warmth spread through her. It wasn't large, not like her old house, but it was perfect. The paint was a soft, faded blue, like the sky on a hazy morning, and a small, tangled rose bush climbed beside the front door. Inside, the rooms were small but bright, filled with natural light. The kitchen had a charming window seat, and from the tiny living room, she could actually hear the faint, rhythmic whisper of the waves. It was exactly what she hadn't known she was looking for. There were no grand hallways, no echoing spaces to remind her of what she had lost. Instead, there was a feeling of cozy welcome, a sense of intimacy that felt like a gentle hug. This wasn't a place to fill with memories of the past. It was a blank canvas, ready for new ones. As she stood in the small backyard, smelling the salty air and feeling the breeze on her face, Mary knew this was it. This tiny, humble cottage, so different from her previous life, felt just right for her new beginning. It was small, but it was hers, and it was by the sea. Moving into the little blue cottage was a flurry of activity and a test of Mary's strength. Boxes were everywhere, stacked high, like unsteady towers, filled with relics of her old life. She hadn't realized how much stuff she had accumulated over the years, and each item seemed to carry a memory, some sweet, some bittersweet. Lifting heavy boxes, unwrapping fragile dishes, and deciding where everything should go in her much smaller space was truly hard work. Her back ached, her hands grew tired, and some evenings, she simply collapsed onto her air mattress, too exhausted to do anything but listen to the distant lull of the waves. But something magical happened with each box she opened. As she unwrapped a framed photo, she'd decide if it still sparked joy, or if it was a memory she needed to let go of. A favorite teacup, once part of a set for two, now seemed perfect for her solitary morning brew. Each decision, no matter how small, felt like an act of creation, a deliberate choice about what she wanted to bring into this new chapter. It wasn't just unpacking, it was curating, sifting through her past to build a foundation for her future. A box of old books, long forgotten, revealed a dusty copy of a novel she'd loved as a teenager. A small, handcrafted wooden bird, a gift from her daughter, found a special spot on the windowsill overlooking the sea. Every item placed, every picture hung, felt like a deliberate step forward. The exhaustion was real, but so was the growing sense of ownership and peace. With each item finding its new place, the cottage slowly stopped feeling like a temporary dwelling and started to become truly her home, a warm, inviting space carved out just for her, right by the ocean she had dreamed of. Each unpacked box wasn't just an object, it was a tiny victory, a tangible move towards the new life she was bravely building. Once the last box was unpacked and the little cottage began to feel like home, Mary fell into a new, comforting rhythm. Her favorite part of each day was her walk on the beach. She would put on her sturdy walking shoes, grab a small canvas bag, and head out, letting the salty air fill her lungs. The beach was never the same twice. Sometimes the waves crashed with a booming roar, other times they whispered soft secrets to the shore. The sand stretched out, endless and inviting, a perfect contrast to the confined feeling she'd experienced back in her old life. She began to collect seashells, not just any shells, but ones that caught her eye with their unique patterns or delicate colors. A spiral shell, smooth from years of tumbling in the waves, would find its way into her bag. A piece of sea glass, softened and rounded by the ocean's touch, would gleam like a tiny jewel. Each shell was a small treasure, a reminder of the beauty that could be found even in broken pieces. She didn't seek perfect shells, she sought interesting ones, those with stories etched into their surfaces. As she walked, the worries that had once consumed her began to recede, much like the tide. The rhythmic sound of the waves, the vastness of the sky, and the cool touch of the breeze brought a deep sense of peace she hadn't felt in years. She wasn't thinking about John, or her past, or the daunting tasks of her new life. She was simply being. Her shoulders, which had been hunched with tension for months, slowly relaxed. Her breath came easier. She would often find a smooth, sun-warmed rock to sit on, watching the gulls soar and the distant boats sail by, feeling a quiet contentment settle over her. The beach was her sanctuary, a place where she could finally breathe and feel truly at peace. While her daily beach walks brought Mary immense peace, she realized that she also craved something more, something to fill the quiet hours in her cottage. One afternoon, while browsing a local community board, a flyer caught her eye. Beginner's watercolor class, Tuesdays at the community center. A faint memory stirred, a longing from her youth to try painting, a wish that had always been pushed aside by the demands of family and work. She'd always admired art, but never dared to pick up a brush herself. Her heart fluttered with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Could she really do this? At 64, was it too late to learn something entirely new? The old fears of not being good enough, of looking foolish, tried to creep back in. But then she thought of the courage it had taken to sell her house and move across the state. This felt like a much smaller leap. Taking a deep breath, Mary wrote down the contact information. The first class was intimidating. The room smelled of paint and turpentine, and everyone else seemed to know exactly what they were doing. Mary felt clumsy holding the brush, her strokes unsure, and her colors muddy. But the instructor, a kind woman with bright, encouraging eyes, moved around the room, offering gentle guidance. Mary found herself losing track of time, focusing entirely on the canvas before her. She wasn't trying to create a masterpiece. She was simply exploring, playing with colors and water. It was a wonderful, freeing feeling. For the first time in a long time, She was doing something just for herself, a fresh challenge, and a quiet joy. As the weeks of art class turned into months, Mary's initial clumsiness with the brush slowly transformed into a surprising grace. She still fumbled sometimes, but mostly, she found her hand moving with a newfound confidence. What truly sparked her artistic journey was when the instructor suggested painting something that brought them joy. Without a second thought, Mary began to paint the ocean. Her first ocean painting was simple, just a wash of blues and greens, but it held the quiet power of the sea she walked every day. She painted the soft, rolling waves at dawn, the bright sparkle of sunlight on the water at midday, and the dramatic, stormy grays of an approaching squall. The endless shades of blue, the frothy white caps, the smooth, wet sand, all of it poured onto her paper. It was as if her heart, long locked away, had found a language to speak through colors and brush strokes. To her astonishment, her paintings were good. Really good. The instructor praised her natural eye for color and movement, saying Mary captured the very soul of the ocean. Her classmates, too, would gather around her easel, marveling at how she brought the water to life. This unexpected talent brought Mary a joy she hadn't known was possible. It wasn't just the act of painting. It was the feeling of creating something beautiful from her own imagination and experiences. Each finished piece was a testament to her new life, a vibrant splash of hope replacing the dull ache of her past. Her art was more than just pretty pictures. It was a visible sign of her healing, a vibrant expression of her newfound freedom and happiness. The art class wasn't just a place for Mary to paint. It became a warm, welcoming circle of new faces. Her classmates, a diverse group of mostly women from different walks of life, were drawn to her quiet strength and the beautiful art she created. There was Sarah, with her booming laugh and abstract florals, David, who meticulously painted tiny, lifelike birds, and Eleanor, a retired teacher who loved painting whimsical landscapes. They were all there for the same reason, to explore their creativity and find a bit of joy. After each class, they would often linger, sharing stories and cups of tea. Mary, who had felt so isolated after John left, found herself opening up, sharing anecdotes about her beach walks and the challenge of living in a smaller space. They listened, offered advice, and, most importantly, made her feel seen and valued. They celebrated her artistic progress with genuine excitement, praising her ocean paintings with such enthusiasm that her cheeks would flush with a warmth she hadn't felt in ages. These new friendships quickly blossomed beyond the classroom. They started meeting for coffee, taking walks along the pier, and even organized small potluck dinners at each other's homes. Mary, once afraid of being the extra at social gatherings, found herself eagerly anticipating their get-togethers. They shared laughter that was light and free, and offered a kind of gentle support that felt like a soft blanket on a cold night. These friends weren't just acquaintances. They were becoming her chosen family, a vibrant tapestry of companionship woven into the fabric of her new life by the sea. They understood the quiet courage it took to start over, and in their company, Mary felt truly at home. One sunny Saturday, after much gentle prodding from her art class friends, Mary decided to take a leap. Eleanor, with her practical wisdom, had suggested she set up a small table at the local seaside market. "People will love your ocean scenes, Mary," she insisted. "They capture the spirit of this town." Mary was nervous, her stomach fluttering like a trapped bird. The thought of strangers judging her deeply personal creations was daunting, but the encouragement from her new friends gave her the courage to try. She carefully arranged a few of her watercolor paintings on a small display easel, placing them beside a collection of her favorite seashells. The morning air was fresh, filled with the scent of salt and freshly baked bread from a nearby stall. At first, people just walked by, glancing at her table without stopping. Mary felt a familiar pang of self-doubt. Maybe this was a silly idea. Then, a woman with kind eyes paused, her gaze lingering on a painting of a sunset over choppy waves. "This is beautiful," she said softly. "It reminds me of my childhood summers here." Mary's heart skipped a beat. She stammered a thank you. The woman bought the painting. And then another person stopped. And then another. To Mary's utter surprise, her paintings began to sell. People were drawn to the vibrant blues and greens, the peaceful feeling her art conveyed. They loved the way she captured the changing moods of the ocean. By the end of the day, several of her pieces had found new homes. Mary packed up her remaining paintings, her hands trembling not from nerves, but from a bubbling mix of disbelief and joy. She had not only created something beautiful, but others had seen that beauty and wanted to take it home. It was an incredible feeling, a validation she never knew she needed, and a surprising success that whispered of new possibilities. The success at the market was more than just selling paintings. It was a revelation for Mary. It was a tangible sign that she could, indeed, build something new and meaningful for herself. The hollow feeling that had lingered since John left slowly began to fill, replaced by a vibrant sense of purpose. Her days now held a delightful rhythm: morning walks on the beach, gathering inspiration, followed by hours in her sunlit cottage, brushes in hand, translating the ocean's beauty onto paper. She wasn't just painting, she was pouring her heart and soul into each piece, sharing her unique vision of the sea with the world. And in return, the world was responding. People didn't just buy her art, they talked to her, sharing their own stories of the ocean, of memories and dreams stirred by her watercolors. These conversations, often brief but always heartfelt, became another precious thread in the tapestry of her new life. She found immense joy in connecting with others through her art, seeing her paintings bring a smile to a stranger's face, or spark a nostalgic memory. This new purpose wasn't something she had ever sought, or even imagined for herself. For so long, her purpose had been defined by her roles as wife and mother. Now it was about her own creativity, her own voice, and her ability to share beauty with the world. It was a purpose that sprang directly from her deepest passions and her surroundings, and it nourished her in a way nothing else had. Mary realized she wasn't just existing anymore. She was thriving, her life rich with art, connection, and a deep, quiet contentment that felt more authentic than anything she had known before. One evening, as Mary watched a spectacular sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and purple from her cottage window, a profound thought settled over her. She thought back to that devastating day John left, the feeling that her world had ended. She remembered the crushing fear and the hopelessness that had clouded her every waking moment. It had felt like a deep, dark abyss. Yet here she was, in her cozy seaside cottage, surrounded by her own art, with the sounds of the ocean a comforting lullaby. It was a strange, almost unbelievable realization. The heartbreak, as painful as it had been, had actually opened the door to this vibrant, fulfilling life. If John hadn't left, she would still be in that big, quiet house, living a life that was comfortable, but no longer truly hers. She would never have pursued her dream of living by the sea, never discovered her talent for painting, and never found the wonderful new friends who brought so much joy into her days. Her life now was entirely her own creation, built on her terms, guided by her desires, not by expectation or obligation. She chose her days, her activities, her company. There was a quiet power in that freedom, a deep satisfaction in knowing that she had navigated through unimaginable pain and emerged on the other side, not just surviving, but truly flourishing. The tears she shed now were not of sorrow, but of gratitude for the unexpected path her life had taken. Heartbreak had not been the end. It had been the beginning of Mary, truly herself, living her dream. As Mary embraced her new life, a quiet confidence began to bloom within her. She no longer felt like the shattered woman John had left behind. Instead, she felt strong, capable, and wonderfully independent. Each morning, as she woke to the sound of gulls and the scent of the sea, a feeling of genuine happiness bubbled up inside her. It was a deep, steady happiness, born not from outside circumstances but from within, from the knowledge of what she had overcome and what she had built. Her steps on the beach were lighter, her brush strokes bolder. She could fix a leaky faucet in her cottage, manage her own finances with a newfound understanding, and plan spontaneous outings with her friends. These small acts of independence, once daunting, now filled her with a sense of pride. She was charting her own course, steering her own ship, and it felt exhilarating. Mary often thought about the words she had once believed. It's impossible to start over at my age. She had been so wrong. Her journey was living proof that age was just a number, and that dreams, no matter how old, could still be chased and caught. She wasn't just existing. She was truly living, with a heart full of gratitude and a spirit that felt lighter than air. Her wrinkles were still there, perhaps a few more now from all the smiling, but they told a story of resilience, courage, and a life bravely reclaimed. She was not only happy, but she radiated a quiet strength that inspired everyone who met her, a shining example that it's never too late to make your own happiness. Mary's quiet strength and newfound joy didn't stay hidden within the walls of her little blue cottage. Her radiant happiness and vibrant art were noticed by those around her. People at the local market, her friends from the art class, and even new acquaintances would often stop to chat, asking about her journey. When they heard her story of heartbreak, fear, and then the brave steps she took to rebuild her life, they were deeply moved. "Mary, you're an inspiration," a woman told her one day at the market, looking at a painting of a golden sunrise over the waves. "I've been stuck in a rut for years, thinking it's too late for me to try anything new." Mary would simply smile, her eyes twinkling. She wasn't trying to be an inspiration, but her life had become one. She was living proof that it was possible to turn the darkest chapters into the brightest beginnings. Her story spread through the small seaside town, like a warm, hopeful breeze. People shared it with their friends and families, often saying, "If Mary can do it at 64, then maybe I can too." She showed everyone that age wasn't a barrier to chasing dreams, learning new things, or finding true happiness. Her life was a vibrant testament to resilience, showing that even after the deepest sorrow, joy can be found, and new paths can be forged. Mary, once heartbroken and alone, had not only found her own dream life, but had also lit a beacon of hope for countless others, reminding them that new beginnings are always possible, no matter how many years have passed. Her beautiful life was a powerful message, painted in the colors of courage and the endless blue of the ocean.